Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ and I'll be your host for this week. We've got a power-packed show lined up for you. India is playing South Africa. England is playing New Zealand. Mithali Raj is just retired. And in the second half of the show, we will hopefully be joined by a guest to talk more about the South African team. But Varun, welcome to the show. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. We had a break last week and it just kind of felt right with what the IPL being over. I can see DJ's just put on his sunglasses in sunny London.
I just went to watch Top Gun yesterday, dude. What
It's so
a
good.
film!
I
What a
went
film!
I went first day it released here. It was awesome. Really good.
I mean,
Like a
it
really
is.
good sequel.
Yeah. And on that important cricketing note, how are you?
I am fine. Great segue into cricket. But yeah, man, it's been good. It's been a little bit of a break, but I think because this time there were so many matches, one hasn't one enjoyed the IPL enough and now is looking forward to what's happening next. So it's all good, but the India South Africa series has started, which DJ will get into. But yeah, special shout out to Mithali Raj, man. I know she changed women's cricket for a lot of people in India. A lot of people look up to her as well. She's had a fair share of controversy, but I guess when you're that good and you have that much of an influence, that's bound to happen. But all the best to her. She's done really well for the game.
Yeah, absolute legend of the game. I mean, as you said, we've been off on a break for a couple of weeks, but it doesn't feel like the cricketing news ever lets up, right? You had Mithali Raj retiring, KL Rahul, who was supposed to captain this series, he got injured. Our boy Rishabh Pant became captain, which I'm sure we will delve deeper into very soon. But yeah, England has won a test match against New Zealand, which was a really weird test match. Should we talk about that quickly before we get into the India South Africa series? Ben Stokes captaining for the very first time. What a weird way to start your captaincy career, right?
Yeah, new captain, new coach, right? Ben and McCullum. So it's, I mean, if I can be honest, DJ, I thought that match was done. Like I thought it was New Zealand's all the way. I said England. Honestly, I can't recognize half the batsmen. The first three, I don't think I've ever seen them really play. So all sorts of new guys, or I have seen them play, but you know what I meant. But it's essentially like it was New Zealand's game. What went wrong? New Zealand got 132 all out. They got England 141 all out. They then had a fight back. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they were 251 for five,
They were 236 for
251 for
4.
six.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were
they were.
236 for 4 at the end of day 7.
Yeah. So they were 251 for five, 251 for six, 251 for seven. And then they just lost the game because they ended up at 285, gave England what 279 odd to make. And Joe Root just kind of took them home. So I was stunned, man. I didn't even watch the last day because I was like, this is New Zealand's game for sure.
Yeah, it was weird. It's the Ben and Baz show, right? And yeah, Joe Root scored 100 in the fourth innings, his first fourth innings 100, which I thought was pretty strange for a guy who's got 26 test hundreds now. He scored 100 for the first time in the fourth innings of a test match. But yeah, I think there was a nice moment there where he was like, Ben has done this for me many times, and I'm glad to be
This is
standing
like
up
kind
for him.
of, yeah.
Yeah, so it was cool. Anyway, we've got that out of the way. Mithali Raj, of course, there's just lots of writing around. Someone like Jared Kimber has written about her, about how she was a pioneer for the women's game, but first and foremost, she was a batter. Of course, Indian fans all over the world will be thankful to her for all she's done for Indian women's cricket as well as world cricket. She got a double hundred in a test match. She captained India to many glories, and as well as the World Cup final, which ended in heartbreak, of course, in 2017 at Lords. Well, that would have been a fairy tale way of ending. But one of her stated messages was she wanted to leave women's cricket in a better way, that better state than she entered it. And of course, she's done that, and it's only on an upward trajectory. So, thank you to that legend. But we must now talk about this India South Africa series. Varun, first of all, yeah, go on.
I was going to ask you, so as T20 cricket fans, how long have we waited to see a lineup without Rohit, Kohli, and Rahul? I mean, let's be honest, we bitch non-stop, okay, about them. probably 80% is justified, 20% is not. But what were your thoughts? Were you like, yes, finally we get a team without these three anchors? Or were you like, this is going to be problematic?
I mean, I think the batting was okay, right, in the first test. And first test for first T20. You're talking about Rohit, Rahul, and Kohli. I'm thinking of Test cricket already. But it was we got above 200 in Delhi, which seemed like a pretty tough pitch. Of course, Kishan and Rituraj opened the batting, followed by Shreyas and Pant and everybody and Hardik. Everybody kind of went from ball one, and you ended up with above 200, which is what we've been asking for throughout
Yeah.
when India have been playing, right? Like you don't want to have anchors in that team. And to be honest, I mean, I think Rahul plays a different role for Team India. He goes from ball one for Team India, whereas he doesn't in the IPL. Kohli and Rohit are the guys who probably play that anchor role. So there's only space for one of them maybe in the team, and no Surya either. So a bit of a team in flux, but the batting was fine in the first innings. It was the bowling that really let us down, man. Like, how much do we depend on Bumrah for that lineup? That is the question for me.
Yeah, so Bumrah and Shami, man. So let's talk about that team a little bit since you brought up bowling. So the bowlers were essentially Akshar Patel, Harshal Patel, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, uh, Chahal, and Avesh Khan. So not, not a great lineup. I would say in our best 11, probably Harshal and Chahal would find a spot. But Bhuvi, nothing against the guy, but I feel like he's like a Dhawan case, man. Like you got to just be done with him at some point. You have to pull that plug and just kind of be done. Now, I'm not blaming him for the loss or anything, but I'm saying if you are going to be playing experimental series, you might as well try some other guys. So yeah, DJ. To me, my top five is basically Shami, Bumrah, Harshal, Chahal, and Jaddu, right? And with Pandya as the sixth. So that would be my top. And they just didn't deliver that day.
Yeah, but Pandya went for runs. Bhuvi was okay in his first 2 overs. He only went for seven, but
Yeah,
like,
and that's why I'm not trying to like be harsh on him, but I just feel like he's done generally. But yeah, he probably bowled one of the best at an economy rate of 11, which talks a lot about how that innings went.
yeah, but I mean, let's talk about how that innings went. Because, of course, once you've got 200 on the board, which I think was India's highest score against South Africa ever in a T20 match, you'd expected the bowlers to be able to defend over 200 runs. And we just didn't. It
Yeah,
was.
firstly, the big positive is everyone except Shreyas Iyer went at above 150, 160 strike rate, right? So I think that was great. The second thing was Dinesh Karthik was in the lineup in his first game. So also
Yeah.
another positive. But did you see the match? I missed part of it. Did you see there was a lot of controversy after that said Pandya didn't give him strike or he didn't take a single or something like that?
I don't know. DK is like he's like Maverick, right? He's been playing since 1988 or whatever when the original Top Gun came out, and it gets better with age. I mean, he only played 2 balls. It's okay. And Pandya was 31 of 12. I mean, you can't blame him for not like giving
Exactly.
anyone else strike. It was fine, and DK didn't get bat on those 2 balls, and I mean, in the end, it didn't make a difference. But Shreyas, like you talked about him briefly, he started off, he went off to an absolute flyer, but then they started bowling short at him, and he couldn't get it away. And there's some great writing about how he struggled against like the hard lengths and all of that stuff. Of course, Pandya got runs, but he went for runs as well with the ball, which wasn't a good sign for India. Chehel wasn't in great form either, which was weird. Of course, Kuldeep was injured, but yeah,
But so Chahal didn't even complete his overs.
yeah.
Like
Imagine.
Chahal bowled 2.1. And he was bowling the 20th over. Is that shocking? Let's right. We've gone a little bit all over the place this episode, but let's talk about
You want
Captain
structure. You
Pant.
want structure
Yeah, I
to
want
an
some
episode.
structure. I know. I just
Agenda
want to be like,
items.
let's talk about Captain Pant. What did you think of him?
What did you think of him?
Enough experience now,
Yeah,
but
two
just
IPLs experience. Yeah,
yeah, two IPLs, leading international players, leading solid domestic teams. Works with Ricky Ponting, but just somehow doesn't seem to make the right calls. Like I just could not understand why Chahal was held back. Um, and
I mean, there
it
was no
just
senior player, right, in that lineup, other than maybe DK. There's no real senior. I mean, there's Shreyas, who's a KKR captain, so he's had captaincy experience as well.
there's
And
Hardik
you've
Pandya,
tipped him
who's
as a future
India
India
captain.
captain.
Yeah,
Hardik
which
Pandya has been
which
tipped
I'm
as future
clearly.
India captain now.
Yeah, I mean, we keep tipping people, but
It's just
I mean,
everyone.
Shreyas, I think I was wrong about Shreyas for sure, but I don't even know
Just
if
because he
Shreyas
went to
has a
KKR.
place. No, I mean, he's just not. He's just not batting up to the mark, man. Like I don't know. He's just something about his batting is just not working. Hardik Pandya, yes, IPL winning captain, but still fairly new. So I'm not faulting Pant in this, but maybe we should just give credit to South Africa, man.
Killer Miller
Like what a return! What a
again.
return for him.
And we were joking in 2018 how it's not been Miller time since 2012 and 2013
Yeah.
and all. And like
And it
Killer Miller
hadn't
is
it
back.
hadn't been. It's like 8, 9, 10 years later.
Yeah.
This is what what I love about this game, right? You could come back after 8 years and just make an impact. And what form he's in, yeah, 64 of 31, essentially won them that game,
Yeah.
and supported very well by Rassie van der Dussen. So yeah, I think DJ, we just got to give credit to South Africa, man.
But
They are at this point outplaying us in the second T20 as well.
what
They beat us in the first, and we've essentially lost to them earlier this year. So 2022 versus South Africa has not been a great start.
what do you think about the theory that Shreyas Iyer dropped Rassie van der Dussen because Rishabh Pant was captain? Twitter
I hadn't,
conspiracy.
I hadn't heard that, but I doubt it, man. I doubt that's happening. But I
Of
don't know.
course,
It was
it's not
just
happening, but like conspiracy
no. But I
theories
mean,
are always fun.
no, I don't know. I'm just so disappointed. I'll tell you why. Because I thought these guys are all in form. They've just come off the IPL. So many thoughts in my head. Like, is India no longer home ground for our team because everyone has played here so much, so many things. But like I said, they just played better than us.
Yeah, it was nice to see the Delhi uh, crowds. I saw a video of people fighting in the stands also.
Same. I also saw that. I
Pretty
think Wasim
deadly. What
Jaffer.
what happened? Do you think there was a
I
Pant
don't
fan and
know.
an Ayer fan that just got into it?
See, now this is how conspiracy theories start. Like they were fighting the stands about them. I don't know, man. Maybe it is. I feel it's
The
probably something more trivial,
fighting in the aisles in the Kotla, like
like you
dancing in
ate,
the aisles in Sharjah.
like you ate my last chicken tikka roll or something. I have a feeling that's what the fight was about. It wasn't as deep as you're suggesting, but
No, it wasn't probably, but it was pretty messed up. But at least Kishan got runs, right? He struggled. Kishan
he
got runs,
doesn't
so
ever hit the ball in the middle of the bat, but somehow he gets runs. So kudos to him.
yeah. But 77, and there was one over of Maharaj where he just went ballistic, and so he hit two sixes, right, in the first two balls. Then the third one, he hit a one bounce four, and he was disgusted with himself. Did you see that?
He's like, can you imagine what Maharaj must have felt? Like, I didn't see him being disgusted, but I can totally visualize it.
He's like, oh yeah. He wanted to be like Yuvraj, hitting six sixes and all. Like, in fact, Yuvraj put up a tweet saying 3 years I've been retired, and he put up
Yeah,
videos. Did you see that tweet?
I saw that tweet. I haven't seen a video, but I saw that tweet.
Yeah, so he put up a video of people saying nice things about himself and talking about himself. It's just great. You
You
have to
mentioned
love Twitter sometimes.
you mentioned Yuvraj six sixes. I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but 2 or 3 weeks ago, I actually had coffee with Simon Toffel, the cricket umpire, and I think I sent you a picture, DJ, of this as well.
Mm.
So that was really a lot of fun, and Simon was great. Like we were talking about everything from technology to his kind of best memories on the field, and he, even without me prompting him, he said he had a lot of fun with Virender Sehwag and Square Leg, and it's like
Singing songs together?
if Simon, yeah, singing songs, if Simon Toffel gave a decision not out, and Viru thought it was out, when he was standing next to him, Viru's sledge used to be, "Come on, boys, we have to get this guy out twice now." Because Simon didn't give it the first time. But yeah, talking about Yuvraj six sixes, Simon was having a nice laugh with us. He says I think that last one was a no ball, but don't tell Yuvi that because he could have got 42.
7 6s.
So that was a nice.
And that guy who
nice
hit
moment.
7 6s for actually won England that Test match. Like, what a spell by Stuart Broad as well, man. Like,
Yeah, seriously,
I
man.
mean, speaking of comebacks, it's like we've talked about DK, we just talked about Killer Miller, and Stuart Broad, who was dropped for the Ashes. Oh, was he not dropped? He was dropped for the West Indies tour. Comes
I
back
think
in, runs through
both,
New Zealand, wins them the Test match.
yeah, both. I mean, Jimmy and Broad.
Ridiculous. What a ridiculous
Yeah.
week it's been. We go on a break for 1 week and all of this stuff just
So much
goes
happens.
wild. Yeah, insanity. But anyway, yaar, what's going to happen in the series now? We are
So
6
we're
down for 112 as we record, and the second half we'll be wrapping the T20 with a South African commentator, podcaster, and fan. So watch that space. Hopefully. But yeah, where do we go from here?
yeah. So you mentioned
To a series
it's
so far.
130 for 6 and 19 overs. Best case scenario, we get to like 140, which will probably we might touch that, but I don't think it's been great overall. I think India will come back, so it's probably going to be like a 3-2. But given South Africa started so well, I would be inclined to say 3-2 to South Africa, and probably let's see, man. Dravid might end up playing some of the new guys like an Umran Malik, but overall, not a great start, especially in a year where we've got a T20 World Cup.
Yeah, what about DK, who's currently batting at 17 of 18 balls? He's
18.
the finisher and all of that stuff, and like that
Yeah,
needs
he
to
was. I think he
translate it,
came
right?
in the 13th over, so suddenly a lot different. But let's see, man. We have to see. We have to wait for both sides to bat because Shreyas also found it tough. DK also found it tough, and nobody else got going. So, yeah, we'll have to just wait and see. But generally not a good start.
Yeah, in the meantime, check out Virat Kohli's holiday pictures. He's in Bali or Thailand or somewhere, something like
Oh,
really
is he?
blue ocean, and he's having fun. So hopefully that recharges our man to come back and score a ton of runs in England in the ODIs as well as the last remaining Test match, which is I think it's next month, right?
I think it's July. That's right.
Yeah, so that's a continuation of the series from last year, but neither Root nor Kohli are going to be captains. Which is,
Yeah, how
I mean, who?
phenomenal is that?
That's just it's pretty ridiculous, right?
It's crazy. It's
It's
just
pretty
crazy.
surreal. Anyway, as you can see, the sun is back on my face, and I think that's probably a cue for us to take a break. And on the other side of the show, we will have a chat with a South African fan. So don't go anywhere. This is the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.
Hello. It's been another great week here on the IVM Podcasts Network. On Cyrus Says Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Utsav and Abbas discuss how COVID cases are on the rise in Mumbai. Introducing our new show, Intel vPro presents Future Proofing with Eklavya Bhattacharya, your one-stop shop for all things Web3, blockchain, metaverse and so much more. In the first episode, Eklavya talks to Advertising is Dead host Varun Dugirala about advertising on the web. On Simplified, Chuck, Shriketh and Tony discuss why we aren't excited about smartphones anymore. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam and Atul Suri, CEO at Marathon Trends, talk about trend investing principles. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth explains the 3 pillars of content creation. And on All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk analyze the Lancet Commission report on financing primary healthcare. We've got some exciting news for you. IVM Podcasts has just launched its merch, and our first line is out now. Head to the IVM Podcasts website and click on the shop tab to check out our first collection of t-shirts. Do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it in. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week. SBI Life Insurance, Apne Liye, Apno Ke Liye. Jupiter, a digital banking app. Capgemini, get the future you want. Intel vPro, built for business. And Intel, future banao wonderful with Intel powered laptops.
Welcome back from that break, and you're still listening to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Just before we went into that break, Varun and I were talking about the second T20 between India and South Africa. It was into the 19th over. I was complaining about how Dinesh Karthik had only crawled to 17 of 18. He hit 2 sixes of the next 2 balls that he faced. Varun was complaining about Bhuvaneshwar Kumar and how he'd been inconsistent. He ended up with figures of 4 for 13. We were talking about Rishabh Pant's captaincy. But as promised, we have got with us a very happy man after South Africa have just won the second T20 as well. Welcome to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Mpho, how are you doing, man? How are you feeling after that second win?
Look, I'm really happy. I think this one was a lot better than the first one because I think South Africa used to chasing low scores. The one on Thursday, was it Friday or Thursday? Friday, whatever it was Thursday. That was a lot. That had me on the edge of my seat a lot more. This one I was a lot more calmer once we saw 149.
Okay, well, we will get into that. But do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what you do, so that they know where to find you?
Oh yes, yes, you can find me. Oh, so I'm a commentator on Guerrilla Cricket South Africa. Some of those know it as One World Sports Radio, 1WSR.com. It's either or. And so yeah, I'm a cricket commentator. I'm not commentating on the series, but I am watching it, giving others a chance. However, yeah, look, and you can find me on Twitter at Mpho Mutloane. That's MPHO MOREKI.
Brilliant, and the guys at Guerrilla Cricket are doing an awesome job both across the UK as well as South Africa. And you guys have been in some stupendous form. I mean, we were talking before the break about how South Africa seems to really like breaking Indian cricket fans' hearts. Like we had the Test match series that went on before. We then got thrashed in the ODIs. And now it seems to be continuing. I didn't realize this, but India has never beaten South Africa in a bilateral T20 series at home. Did you know that stat?
Yes, I did. And the last time I think South Africa was in India, we had a temporary coach and he managed to draw a series with you guys. Yeah, because the one game was rained out. And then played, it was a 1-1. And it was, I think they did try, it was the first time we saw Temba Bavuma in international cricket, in T20 cricket. So that was a key one. But look, I think there's a lot of questions around Indian cricket, but it's the fact that you can't select your best 11. That's not your best 11 out there. That's not the 11 that's going to play at the World Cup. So what is it that you're looking to get? And it's one of those series where you have to then figure out what is it you're going to get. South Africa was going there to win the series because they're bringing out the best 11. Whereas India, it's like that series against Sri Lanka last year where Rahul Dravid took over as coach and they tried different combinations. And I think Shikhar Dhawan was captain or something like that going into the World Cup or whatever it was. So there you're trying to learn. Here you're also trying to learn. And now I hope there are more answers now for India than there are before the series. And I think that's what you need to look at it. I think if India gives us a stronger 11, it could be different, even though I do think the South African team is probably the best T20 team in the world right now.
Oh, big words. Awesome. So I want to pick up on a couple of things there because as Indian cricket fans, we're obviously quite biased and we tend to criticize more easily. We probably don't have as neutral a view of the team as you have, but you said that this isn't our best team, right? In your view, obviously Rohit will come back. He'll take over captaincy. He'll probably just fit in at the top of the order instead of Ruturaj, who's the backup. Who else are you seeing as India's best 11? Because I'm really interested in this question because we have this conversation all the time. Of course, Bumrah isn't there, so he walks back in as well as the second main seamer. Shami isn't playing. Kohli and Surya Kumar Yadav, those are the other two big names for me. So tell me about your what you think India's strongest 11 would look like in a T20 game.
So I look at the side and a couple of things come out to me. So Hardik Pandya and maybe even I want an Indian team with Yuzvendra Chahal. I don't know what's going on, but he should always be playing. But Pandya and Chahal are the guys who would go into the World Cup, the team that played in the World Cup last year. I wouldn't change much because I still think you guys have one of the best You have the best players as individuals of T20 cricket. Kohli's still very good. He comes back in. I like KL Rahul at the top. Rohit Sharma comes into the side. You spoke about Surya Kumar Yadav. And then the question of the all-rounder, that was for me where India kind of lacked. And Hardik Pandya, on the purple patch that he's at, he's not been given the opportunity to show him, but he's the one who walks into the side, but he's already there. Bumrah changes games. And even on this pitch today, if Bumrah opened the bowling, he would have gotten the same joy that the South African team has got. And so for me, I look at the top of that batting order and it looks inexperienced. And I look at obviously Rishabh Pant. You could say he's in out of the team. I wouldn't necessarily have him in my best Indian 11, even though I think he's explosive. I do think there is the option of going with KL with the gloves and maybe lengthening the batting. But he's also there. But the captaincy side, I think he's been shown up and he's new to this thing. So it kind of reminds me of Aiden Markram when India came to South Africa and they just blew him out the water 5-0. That's what's happening here. So because going to the World Cup, I know that I'm not going to see this 11 or this Indian batting lineup going to the World Cup. So it's just a little bit of okay, we are beating India, but actually we're not beating the India that we want, because Rohit against South Africa has probably one of the best records against any other team in the world. And Virat Kohli is always as dangerous as you want him to be. And those are the guys we want to be beating. We love what you guys are doing, but we can see even from here that you're testing out the waters, seeing who's going to put up their hand for guys who are going to be squad members at the World Cup and not necessarily fighting in the 11. For me, this is a massive series for Hardik Pandya and Chahal and maybe even Bhuvi, because those are the spots in the team that are actually very open. And yeah, I'd like to see a lot more of Pandya with the bat. I think he's had a great season. I like Gaikwad. He's having a tough start against really good bowlers, but this is something for you guys to have a look at and maybe make a decision going to the World Cup to say, okay, we're somewhere against South Africa against the world-class bowling attack. Does he go to the World Cup? And from where I'm sitting, he may need more time, and that's why he's got 5 matches. Hopefully he can bounce back on the other end, but this isn't India, and I am of no illusions that the South African team is beating an Indian A team.
That's a very interesting perspective, actually, because I think the South African team is as you said definitely one of the top teams in the T20 format. They did very well at the last World Cup, narrowly missing out at qualification. I think it was 5 wins out of 6, which is, I mean, it's a great record to have, right? But let's talk about what South Africa have done, right? Obviously, there have been trials and tribulations with the system. There have been comments by Dean Elgar saying people go to the IPL may not come back. Obviously, that hasn't come true. But every time you think you need a hero, someone has stepped up, right? Last game, it was Rassie van der Dusen. This game, it was Henrik Klaassen, who wouldn't have even played without the injury to Quinton de Kock. And David Miller seems to be there at the end of every IPL or T20 game we watch these days. He's had a second life, a resurgence of kind of huge proportions. So how? And the other thing I want to actually ask you is, because we talked briefly about captaincy, and the last time we toured South Africa, we lost a test captain in Virat Kohli. It sounds like we might lose a T20 captain pretty soon as well in Rishabh Pant, but we'll see. I want to talk to you about how big a role Temba Bavuma plays in all of this. Uniting that team, bringing it together. He may not be getting the big runs, and you saw today he played a pretty rash shot to get out at a crucial stage. But I want to talk to you about his captaincy as well. So tell me how this team is gelling together. I guess that's the question.
Look, I think regardless of what's been going on in the media or everything else, this team has pretty much had a siege mentality, even in the World Cup, even in the way in which they handled the Quinton de Kock issue at the World Cup. That kind of gave you an inkling as to how strong this team is and where this team was going. I think Boucher's been building a culture with this team. They picked the style of play, and the style of play makes Temba Bavuma very crucial. and important in this side, largely because I think Mark Boucher likes the foil of having someone accumulating runs on the other end, and Timber hasn't done that well of late in terms of rotating the strike and moving it along in the thing, because Timber's supposed to enable the other guy on the other end to take his time to get in while he does that. And the only person I worry about when Timber's batting with is Rassie van der Dussen, because they both are similar. They take a lot of time to get going. Rassie gets going and he does well. But the one thing for me is the leadership. I think Timber's really, really great leader. He's one of the best. I think he's the best captain South Africa's had domestically over the past 4 years, and largely because he's always been able to get the best out of his guys. He's a man manager, one of the best, and he's one of the best cricketing minds I have ever come across. He knows the game in and out. He understands how it is. Like today, him bowling his spinners just 4 overs, 2 overs each is an indication of the type of thinking that he's always willing to adapt, always willing to change. And on top of that, he requires all his players to be flexible. What Mark does, Mark Boucher, with all this drama that's come across him, the reason why Mark was picked was to give this team, to harden this team up, because a lot of the people in South Africa, and Graham, when he came in as director of cricket, felt this team was soft, had a soft underbelly. You put them up against the 8 ball and then they crumble. And it's taken a long time, but this team is turning the corner. We saw that in the India series. India put South Africa on the back foot a lot of times in Test series, and they just kept on fighting back. And him, Dean Alga, and Temba are this triumvirate of a leadership that kind of gets these guys to be fighting. And the character of your team is based on the character of the captain and the coach. And both in the Test side and in the ODIs and the limited over sides, both captain and coaches are guys who people don't think should be there or should have been there. People who underrated seriously, but become very valuable because of the character and the grit that they show. Over and above being great cricketers, Mark was one of the best cricketing minds we knew. He helped Graham immensely in his time as captain. So that's the thing about this team. And so, yes, Temba's not scoring big runs. Temba may not even be selected in an IPL auction. But what Temba brings is the leadership on the field to make the decisions. And in doing so, relieving all the bigger players to do whatever they do. And even when batting, Temba's like the guy who then dictates how this innings was going to go. That's what I told you earlier on. I had no issues with the 149 on a pitch like that. I knew it was going to be tough, but I knew it's a type of chase that Temba prides himself on, and he knows what he needs to do. And that rash shot you speak about is Temba actually sacrificing himself so that somebody else can come in and carry it on, because he knew he had Parnell, he had David Miller on the back end, guys who needed to accelerate their own rate. His job was done. His job is to get through the new ball, to give the guys an opportunity to play an older ball, and be able to get that platform and launch. He also can do that, but his is more of an accumulation. And you saw the shots he was playing. That's the repertoire that he does. And that's what got him in the side in the first place. Those little cuts, those little nudges. And so for me, I'm very comfortable to have Temba there. And the other thing is that having him there as captain takes the burden off of everybody else. They trust him, they love him, this team is gelling, and all the series was for this team to replicate and remind themselves of the processes and the plans that they have going to Australia. And so I'm a massive fan of Temba. He plays for my domestic franchise, and he's done incredible things for us this side here. And so I think today the Indian public got to see the mind behind this man. Look, the runs will come, and I'm not worried about him because they can come. And he's even, for me, if you look at his ODI form, that's for me is like, okay, no, this guy can play. And so it's just adapting in T20. And it's interesting that I think Quinton likes batting with Temba at the top over everybody else. And that's one of the other reasons why. Quinton loves batting with Temba. He kind of, it just works. And so, look, the runs will come, and he's a great captain. Today, I thought he played really well. That 35 was so important because in a chase like that, you don't need everyone to bash it out the park, because everyone thinks, okay, it's 149. Okay, try to get there as quickly as possible, because if you don't, you might end up being where India was at 149 for 6. Whereas the other way is, no, take time out the game. You need one guy anchoring the innings, and this is the South African strategy. They anchor the innings until over 15. One of the top 4 batters need to bat until over 15, which is why Rassie last game took such a long time to get going. And then only after around about over 12, 13 did he start accelerating, because that's the game plan with South Africa. They need somebody there because to prevent the massive collapse, essentially. And so that's the game plan. And so I thought when Temba got to over 11, he felt that David Miller was in the hat. You also had Dwayne Parnell and Kagiso can bat a little bit, and they needed around about 80, 70 to win. So it's a little bit easier for him then to start accelerating and looking for boundaries, because he knows everyone's here. But that's the strategy. I think he plays it in windows. And so Temba's window ended at over 10. After that, someone else needs to come in. So, try play as positively as you can.
Yeah, and as you said, you needed someone to hit the ball out of the park. He had someone like that batting with him, Henrik Larsson. 81 of 45. He looked like he was batting on a track, on a completely different track from everyone else. His sixes seemed to get bigger the more cramps and the more tired he got. He was just... And he loves batting against India. Now, how good is it for South Africa to be able to rely on someone like him to fill in at the last second and come up with the goods?
It's actually quite interesting because there's a lot of other wicketkeeper batters around, like Ryan Rickleton's waiting for his opportunity. He's a great wicketkeeper batter. And Heinrich was dropped from the side for the limited overside in the previous India series. And so we were surprised to see him come back into the side. But look, the reason why Heinrich Larsson is there is that he holds the character of Mark Boucher. I think there was a joke that Heinrich Larsson is like Boucher's favorite son because he never gets dropped. Or at the World Cup, he always find a way into the 11 because he's the type of guy Mark Boucher likes, because he knows he's always there for the big time. He was always there for the big moment, and he's on a purple patch right now. He dominated South Africa's ODI one day domestic one day cup, scoring lots of runs. I think the one time he scored about 150 in like a quarter, in like the last game of the regular season before the semi-final. And was one of the top run scorers. So he's got it. He's in a purple patch. So Teresa Hendricks, actually. They all are batting out of their skins right now. And so it's a good thing to have the depth that South Africa has. Everyone's wanting Devil Brevis. He doesn't make it into the side with these players playing like this. And to a certain extent, a guy like, and that's for me the disappointing thing is Tristan Stubbs. Now the question is, next game, do you bring Stubbsy in if Quinton's fit and let Heinrich sit? Because Tristan Stubbs can do the exact same thing that Heinrich's been doing, because we've watched it the entire season so far domestically. So it's a massive headache for the selectors, but it's a good one anyway, because you know that whoever goes on, they know what they need to do and they do it. And it's a great thing that it's Rassie last game, it's Heinrich this game, guys who, well, a lot of people are saying Rassie should actually not be in the side, but he's playing. Temba's put in a hand in this innings, which is really important when wickets are falling around him. Guys who people don't want in the side are playing. So for me, that says to Mark Boucher that he's doing a great job. The selectors are selecting correctly, because that's what you want. You want guys when they come back in international cricket to take you to score big runs and do things for you, and they've done that.
And so you mentioned anchors, actually, and this is probably the last question before I ask you to make a prediction and we wrap. But you mentioned anchors. I think that's okay if you're batting second. I think it's more troublesome if you're batting first to have anchors batting to over 10 and 15, because you don't know how many you need to get on that track. And India have struggled with that in the past, because we've either gone too hard or gone too slow. So does South Africa have... so they batted second both times, and there's an argument that it's easier to bat second and win games because you know how many runs you're chasing. I think it's 55-45 or something like that, percentage-wise. But what is South Africa's strategy if the coin comes down against them in the third game and they have to bat first?
Look, I think South Africa's strategy will be the same. My only issue like I agree, and I'm not a fan of the strategy. It's just what we need, what South Africa need right now is consistency, something that you can fall back on, and well, there's many ways to cut this thing. But the plan is always going to be the same. They have a number in their head that they want to get. But at the beginning, they'll assess conditions, and then round about over 6, they'll know what number the team thinks you can get, and they try aim for that. At the World Cup, in the first game of the World Cup, and this is where it went wrong, and that's why they got eliminated. They played great cricket, but they got eliminated against Australia when they misread the pitch and they misread what the number was that they needed to beat Australia. And the number was 150. It wasn't 130. And they went about playing for 130 rather than 150, and effectively got them knocked out of the World Cup. And same thing with Bangladesh was a chase. So for me, I'd always look to that game because that was all on Mark Boucher, the Brains Trust, and everybody else. And so that's the question. Also, the question is they don't have they may have a video analyst on tour now, but previously they didn't. And this was one of the reasons why these things happen against Australia. So for me, that's going to be quite interesting to see how they do it. But it's the same way. It's the same way. Have someone in the top 4 bat until over 15 and get themselves out there. A little bit more aggressive when they bat first. So Timber will try but he does go out and look for runs or look for boundaries. It's just he's not a power hitter that everybody wants him to. But obviously everyone else has the same mentality. It's all about what's the game plan. Let's get to 15 overs and see. Because this team backs themselves to score 60 runs in the final 5 overs. They back themselves on that. That's what they want. They were like, whatever target we get at 15, you need to add 60 on that, and that's what you think you can get. It's a little bit dangerous. But they'll bat normally. But obviously, in when you're setting, it's now up to the X factor players, the Markrams, the Millers. Well, Millers more at the end, but it's the Markrams, the Quinton de Koks to give you that start. If you don't get that start from Quinton, Aiden comes in at 3. Aiden needs to give you that start. But you also saw what they're trying to do with Dwayne Pretorius. This is what I suggest, what I've been suggesting all along. Dwayne can be your pinch hitter at 3 or 4, depending on what you want in the power play, because he can clear the boundary easily. And if you tell him that that's his job, to come in, get your quick fire 20, get that power play rolling, and that happens if you lose a very early wicket. And I think they need to use him a lot more. It was funny because I was calling for it because Mark Boucher lost to a team that did that to bringing Dwayne Pretorius in at 4 in the MSL final, the last MSL final we ever had. Mark Boucher Spartans, where Heinrich was playing, they lost out to a team that was chased. They set about 140 on a flattish wicket. And they brought the team that won the Paul Rocks brought Dwayne in to bat with Faf du Plessis at number 4. And all Faf told Dwayne was hit the ball out the park. And Dwayne just got a quick fire 25. It set the innings in motion, and Mark Boucher's team lost out. I've been waiting for this strategy to come out for 3 years now. It's finally here. So happy to see that. And it's things like that change the momentum of the game. And now you've also got Wayne Parnell. You've also got Tristan Stubbs. So you've got guys in the back end that can do that. So the guys up front can now be a little bit more aggressive because you've now got batting actually on the back end. So I'm excited to see what happens when they bat first, because I think they might actually be a little bit more aggressive than what we've seen.
Very interesting. It's like it's 1996 and Pat Simcox is coming out to do the pinch hitting role again against India, which was I don't have very fond memories of that either. But the other interesting thing I think I picked up from that was the dependence on Mark Boucher was setting targets and things like that, whereas the Indian coach Rahul Dravid almost flies under the radar a little bit. It sounds like Mark Boucher's got, I mean, obviously Dravid's there behind the scenes and looking at stuff, but Boucher's looking like he's much more involved. They rely on him a lot more. And Dravid's probably a little bit hamstrung by having to deal with different captains, not being able to work with Rohit in this series. And while he was working with Rohit, I think they had 12 T20 wins on the trot or something like that. It may not have been the best teams in the world, but winning is winning, right? But yeah. Yeah, super interesting. Can
Yeah.
I just
Can
ask
I
you?
just correct
Yeah,
something there?
go on.
So it's Mark and the senior players, but
Okay.
in terms of total setting.
Mhm.
So like if one of the guys goes out, they'll tell you if it's slow or fast, what they think, and it's Mark and Timber and some of the senior players. So that's the whole leadership thing
Okay, so the
they do.
leadership groups are
Yeah, it's
dangerous
just that they don't
phrase.
have somebody who's analytically based to say it's 162.
Yeah, okay, so it doesn't spit out a number from a computer. But speaking of numbers, have you got a prediction for our listeners for this series? Obviously, it's already 2-0 up. You going with the Glenn McGrath 5-0 or?
Look, I think it'll be a 4-1. I think there's a game that India will win.
Okay, that is kind.
There's
Hopefully
probably
India
going to be
can
a
put up a
response
big
in the
one.
next game. It's probably the
Hopefully,
next game.
yeah. We haven't changed our team for the last two games and haven't won a toss either. So let's see how that works out. We will see, no doubt, by next week where we land up. But yeah, thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. No doubt we will speak again soon. And do you want to tell our listeners where they can find your podcast and stuff? Because you've been doing a basketball podcast, so may as well
Yes,
plug that
yes.
for any
Yeah.
basketball fans.
Well, yeah, we've also got our cricketing podcast is coming back soon once I think Tim comes back from his holiday. I think Tim was in the bush this week or something. It was really nice for him. But yeah, so we've got a cricket podcast on One World Sports Radio. You can find us on YouTube at 1WSR.com. That's where all the cricketing podcasts are done. We also have soccer podcasts there. And also when we go live on commentary, you can watch us on YouTube there at one World Sports Radio, the number World Sports Radio. And then obviously I've got a basketball podcast. It's called the Ball and All Podcast, also on YouTube as well, also on Twitter at my handle at Mpho Mutloane, MPHOMOREKI.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And as you guys know, this is the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Podbean. We're on YouTube as well. So if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe so you get updates. Leave us a review on Spotify, Apple. And yeah, we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Tip, One Hand. So come and say hi. And we will see you next week, hopefully with a little bit better news for Indian cricket fans. But yeah, thanks again for coming on the podcast, and we will speak to you soon, man.